Hi, and welcome to the video on succession planning for EBPs, funding, fatigue, and future proofing. I'm Dr. Cameo Stanick. I'm Senior Director of Behavioral Health Implementation and Innovation with Character Strong. Character Strong is a multi-tiered social, emotional, and mental health solution for pre-K through 12 schools, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been with the network for many years, starting with my predoctoral internship, where I was funded through the NCTSN at the Medical University of South Carolina's National Crime Victim Research and Treatment Center. I was affiliated with the network through a couple of different grants when I was a university professor at the University of Montana. I've also been a grantee and now as an affiliate. In this video, we're aiming to answer a particular question. How do we keep our evidence-based practice investments sustainable in the long term, even when funding runs out or changes? So what is succession planning? What do we mean? In the best of circumstances, succession planning, which is really sustainability planning for organizations, it's a proactive process to protect people, knowledge, and resources so that your organization continues to provide high-quality interventions that are on target for your client population, even during staff turnover, funding shifts, or policy change. In dissemination and implementation terms, sustainability is the organization's capacity to support a practice. Sustainment is the outcome, which means continued delivery with acceptable fidelity and results. There are multiple dissemination and implementation frameworks that recognize the importance of sustainability as an equal opportunity phase to other implementation phases, such as in the EPIS framework, which is the Exploration, Preparation, Implementation, and Sustainability framework by Dr. Greg Ahrens and colleagues. Sustainability includes an emphasis on keeping the core practices going, even while the context adapts. I think of succession planning in some ways as the exploration phase of sustainability. This is the proactive piece where if we're thinking ahead before we even select practices or initiatives to sustain and considering what is built into the model that could be supported internally, given the resources we have or will have, even if the context changes or funding goes away or there's turnover. There are a few different recommendations to improve an organization's succession planning and sustainability process. I'll discuss two important ones here. And in both cases, I've used these within my own organizations as well as seen them used in organizations with which I've consulted. So the first recommendation would be to utilize resource mapping. So you can do this later prior to funding running out or when policy change happens, but really the earlier the better. Resource mapping is a little like creating a Venn diagram of the indicators that are important to the selection or retention of EBPs in your organization. This includes identifying client demographics, billing pathways, tech requirements, other grants and braided funding structures, and various characteristics of EBPs, such as a supervision structure or re-credentialing requirements and cost, and the targeted coverage. So looking at where there's overlap or possible redundancy and needed coverage and other factors that might not be covered according to the matrix or the array of EBPs that you have. So using this information to guide your EBP selection and retention process ultimately is part of the resource mapping process. This may mean that part of succession planning and sustainability also means de-implementation. So if you've gone through the resource mapping process and you find that you have redundancy or there are certain EBPs, given their characteristics and given the characteristics of what you're needing in the long term within your organization, that there may need to be EBPs that are faded or exited or de-implemented ultimately over time. It's better for this to be a proactive, planned decision-making process so that you're avoiding the implementation fatigue and sort of the next shiny thing phenomenon that so many agencies are subject to. It demonstrates strategic planning for employees and can even help prevent staff turnover by communicating these efforts as early as possible in a transparent way. Another recommendation would be to look for train the trainer or other types of sustainability efforts that are built into the protocols that you are selecting or deciding to sustain over time. So as I mentioned, this might mean narrowing down your EBP pool to those that already have this as part of the model, or writing those EBPs that have this type of sustainability protocol built into it into your grants. Um, or at least EBP protocols that allow this to be built in, where you could work with the developers around building in a train the trainer type plan or other kind of sustainability option. This is going to help with reducing the number of one-off trainings, reducing waste and spending and time, and increasing continuity for your staff and organization. So, for example, organizations could develop an internal champion nomination process, which may include or not include being paired with external consultants, just depending on the practice, or perhaps it's time limited, and develop onboarding and training cohort practices in order to disseminate the EBPs throughout an organization and to relevant staff. By identifying multiple champions and even incentivizing this process, if that's a possibility for an organization, you're proactively building in your plan to reach sustainment so that good initiatives don't dissolve if the person who led them leaves, or if the funding supporting an EBP that perhaps doesn't have this kind of a model built into it ends. This means no disruption in care for clientele and less pausing and panicking happening among leadership or threatening other ongoing initiatives to supplant resources. So whether it's resource mapping and or focusing on EBPs with built-in sustainability, such as train the models, there are resources available to measure some of these implementation constructs as well. And that can also be a great place to start in terms of planning. For instance, using a measure of the characteristics of an intervention that is completed by maybe a group of clinicians who are evaluating different EBPs, or a select group of champions within an organization. That would allow you to use data to make decisions about head-to-head comparisons of EBPs, which would provide a more objective method for your decision making and could even be combined with the resource mapping process ultimately. So what I've talked about here is by no means a panacea for how to do succession planning and prioritize sustainability within an organization. But our hope is that these ideas will get you started or spark ideas for what you may want to revisit or bring to your leadership teams and staff as you plan for your organization's future. Thank you for learning with us and for your commitment to high quality dissemination and implementation work.